They say you train the algorithm that's replacing you, Lucas said, snapping his laptop shut. Efficiency is the future. I just nodded. Made sense until the system crashes, because there's one thing he doesn't know. My name is Thomas Reeve. I'm 52 years old, and up until 3 weeks ago, I was Senior Data Integration Manager at Helix Core Solutions, a company I helped grow from a dusty shared office space into a name whispered with reverence in AI development.
Circles.
I didn't wear flashy suits. I didn't give TED Talks. What I did was build, code, systems, structure, people. For 19 years, I showed up early and stayed late. Never missed a single system migration, not even when my son, Jason, broke his arm on the schoolyard. I missed the ER. My wife said he asked for me twice. That's the kind of sacrifice nobody tallies in performance reviews. I'd been in the game long before machine learning became the buzzword of every board meeting. I'd written the first script that cross-validated our onboarding data back when we were still hiring through Craigslist. I trained our anomaly detection engine with 6 years of historical data I had cleaned manually, line by agonizing line. I mentored kids fresh out of boot camps, made room for interns, documented everything. I believed in building things that lasted. The new leadership team? Not so much. It started small. My name began disappearing from email threads. I was looped in later. Then they stopped inviting me to sprint planning. You're better focused on long-term architecture, Lucas had said, smiling like he was doing me a favor. I played along. Until the moment I saw the internal memo naming the new project, Helix Stream AI, an AI model trained on my datasets, on my frameworks, on my legacy. And at the bottom of the tech brief, buried in a footnote, model developed with proprietary ReveStack protocols. My name reduced to a protocol, a tool, a stepping stone. So when Lucas sat me down with HR and used the word redundant, I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I looked him in the eye and said, "No worries." Because while they were watching dashboards, I was watching them. They thought I didn't see what they were building. They had no idea I left a gate inside the system, a harmless-looking function call named archivist.mode that no one but me ever touched, a little fail-safe. A reminder, because systems, like people, have memory, and memory doesn't go quietly. Back when I joined Helix Core, we were 6 people, 2 borrowed desks and a fridge that smelled like abandonment. The founder, Alan Tress, used to joke that we were held together with duct tape, ambition, and bad coffee. But we had something real, vision, and a damn good team. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but I was always the first to deliver. When our first healthcare client demanded a system that could sanitize patient records on ingestion, I built the first automated data scrubber by hand. When we landed the logistics contract, I mapped out a scalable ETL pipeline using open-source tools. Because we couldn't afford enterprise licenses yet, each success added a brick to the house we were building. Alan used to call me the spine of Helix Core, not glamorous, but essential. Through every pivot, every product evolution, every rebrand, I stayed. But as the venture capital came in, that house started feeling less like home. The first real sign was when they moved my desk, not physically. They knew better than to be that obvious, but virtually. I was removed from core repositories. My admin rights were restructured. Suddenly, I needed approval to access modules I had written. My own queries returned, permission denied. Lucas told me it was just temporary adjustments during the audit. Sure. Then came the alignment meetings. I was asked to shadow a new hire, Megan, fresh out of Stanford, smart as hell, but still thinking that real-world data behaves like lab simulations. She called one of my longest-running scripts inefficient. Lucas nodded like he agreed. I smiled politely. That script had survived 37 production cycles without a single failure. Next, they stopped asking for my input entirely. When they launched Project Nova, our shiny new predictive engine, I wasn't invited to the kickoff, not even a courtesy call. I found out through a shared calendar invite that wasn't shared with me. The team I had built was now reporting to someone who referred to me as legacy support. The insult wasn't in the words. It was in the tone, like I was a rotary phone in a room full of smartwatches. And the worst part? The younger team, the kids I mentored, coached, vouched for, they looked at me like I was already gone. Not out of malice. Just survival. In a system that rewards fresh and cheap, experience becomes a liability. Still, I kept showing up, kept documenting, kept my tone level and my eyes sharp. Because if they were going to push me out, I was going to walk out with every missing puzzle, piece they didn't even know existed. After the exit meeting, nobody said a word. No hallway glances. No Slack messages. Not even a forwarded meme from DevOps. And Jeff used to send 3 a day. I walked past Lucas's glass office, caught a glimpse of him laughing with someone over a screen full of performance metrics. Probably celebrating another quarter optimized. They didn't just phase me out, they deleted me, but I didn't delete anything. While they drafted press releases about streamlining operations, I was curating an archive, quietly, meticulously. 3 terabytes of logs, change records, process maps, annotated datasets, and 1 little JSON file labeled fail-safe. Megan pinged me that night awkwardly. "Hey Thomas, just a quick question about the legacy data bridge script?" Legacy. The word echoed in my chest. I typed back, "That one's automated, shouldn't need interference." What I didn't say was, "It'll only trigger properly if the data matches the logic I encoded 3 years ago. And if someone, say, decides to cut corners or hard code an override. Well, let's just say some systems don't appreciate shortcuts. So I watched, waited, I didn't burn anything, I didn't break protocol, I just let the system do what I designed it to do, preserve integrity, even when people forget how it works." And when the errors began trickling in, silent and strange, I turned off my phone. I wasn't angry, I was focused. Let them chase ghosts. I already had my next move lined up. 3 days after my exit, while Lucas was likely still celebrating his modernization success, I got an unexpected message on LinkedIn. Subject: coffee or call. It was from Adrienne Cho, CTO at Radian Core, one of our former rivals in the smart data infrastructure space. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Last time was a tense panel discussion on data privacy, where we'd argued over API transparency. She'd won, deservedly. Now she wrote, "Heard you're free. I could use someone who still understands what data structure integrity means." Lunch? We met at a quiet spot in Midtown. No pitch decks, no ego games, just real talk over black coffee and grilled cheese. She slid a folder across the table. "This is what we're building, but our last CTO left it a mess. And what I need now isn't just a lead architect. I need someone who's been through fire and still builds clean." Inside the folder was the blueprint for a next-gen AI integrity layer, advanced, ambitious, and exactly the kind of system Helix Core thought they had mastered. The job? Chief Data Officer, salary, let's just say, it included equity. I didn't say yes, not yet. I wanted time. That same evening, my inbox lit up. 4 messages, all from helixcore.ai. Subject lines ranged from minor performance issues to urgent Reeve stack errors. I smiled. Lucas was panicking. Turns out they'd bypassed one of the archive flags in the data replication flow. A flag that wasn't just a checkpoint, it was a guardian protocol. And the minute they ignored its logic, the system defaulted to sandbox mode, meaning no production outputs, no updates, no live sync, not unless the master admin, me, authenticated the override. Of course, I'd revoked that token before I walked out. My phone rang around midnight. Lucas. I let it go to voicemail. Next. Morning. I listened to his message while sipping coffee on my deck. Hey Thomas, we've hit a snag with some of your modules. Just wondering if you'd be open to consulting, short term. We'd of course compensate you for your time. I didn't reply. Adrienne called later that afternoon. No pressure, but we're green-lighting in 2 weeks. I'd love for you to lead this. That night I signed her offer. The next morning I got another message from Helix Core. This one wasn't from Lucas, it was from Megan. I didn't know they were cutting you loose. I'm sorry. Also, we really can't get the bridge script to stop looping. I didn't answer that either, because the truth is I'd already moved on. Not in anger, not for vengeance, for clarity. They built a system using my legacy, but they didn't respect the architect. Radian Core did, and while Helix Core scrambled to patch what they barely understood, I was already mapping the future of data, ethics and AI validation with a team that saw me as a leader, not a liability. They thought I was leaving with nothing. I left with everything they thought they controlled. It started as whispers on industry Slack groups. Helix Core's new AI engine was producing inconsistent outputs. Some clients noticed slight discrepancies. Others reported corrupted exports. Nothing catastrophic, not yet, but enough to raise eyebrows. By week 3, the whispers became headlines. Helix Core struggles with post-migration downtime. One blog even used the phrase data hemorrhage. Their PR team called it a minor calibration issue. But inside, it was chaos. A friend from DevSecOps, anonymous, of course, sent me a screenshot. Lucas pacing in the war room, hair unkempt, coffee staining the corner of his collar. System rollback initiated, the alert on the screen read. They tried to revert to a pre-Nova architecture. Problem was they'd dismantled too much. They'd fired the people who understood the spine of the system. And when you strip muscle from bone, you better know how to rebuild tendons. They didn't. More calls came in. This time from legal. A formal letter arrived. We respectfully request your cooperation in reviewing certain system documentation you authored during your employment. They even hinted at contractual obligations and potential liability if I didn't assist. I sent it straight to Adrienne's legal team. She read the letter, chuckled, and said, "They're drowning in their own arrogance." Lucas made one last attempt. He messaged me directly. "Please, even just a call, we're trying to hold this together." I didn't even open it. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I'd already given them the answer once. The system they gutted wasn't just code, it was context, it was culture, it was care. You don't fire the map maker and then complain you're lost. And as Helix Core spiraled into lawsuits, client departures, and a slow bleed of trust, I watched from the sidelines, not with glee, just with certainty. Sometimes revenge isn't fire, it's silence, while the structure collapses on its own. It came to light slowly. A few breadcrumbs at first. Megan, who had stayed quiet through most of it, finally reached out again, this time through an encrypted message. Check your old Helix Core email archive. Search Cascade Initiative. It's not what they told you. I did. Tucked inside a folder from 8 months before my termination was a string of internal memos. Not addressed to me, but forwarded through chain replies. One in particular, from Lucas to the CFO, caught my eye. Thomas's protocols are too proprietary. If we're going full Nova, we need to clear legacy dependencies. Clean slate, punk, scalable control. Also, IP clauses seem vague enough to sideline him without legal blowback, so that's what it was, not just cost-cutting. It was a calculated move to erase me from the architecture I created so they could repackage it, rebrand it, and monetize it under their own name, unburdened by the guy who built it. They wanted the system, not the soul. Further down, another note from legal. We suggest finalizing severance before FY close. Recommend no transition overlap, risk of friction. AI model should be trained and decoupled before offboarding. That explained everything. The rushed meetings, the sudden drop in access, the carefully worded restructuring. They'd been planning this like a silent extraction. I sat with that file open for a long time, not angry, not surprised, just validated. Because all those months I'd felt paranoid, uncertain, small. They weren't feelings. They were warnings. My instincts had been right all along. I forwarded the files to Adriana. Her response came in minutes. We're adding this to the R&D patent filing, and possibly a claim if they ever challenge ownership. Then came the kicker. One last attachment from Megan. A voice memo she had recorded during a strategy call, where Lucas and the board were discussing the Nova launch. His voice was unmistakable. We need to move fast before Thomas realizes what we're doing. If he pushes back, we'll paint him as non-adaptive, resistant to innovation. These old-school engineers always overreact, my name, my work. Reduced to a marketing obstacle, but they made one mistake. They underestimated someone who wrote the rulebook and never stopped reading between the lines. At Radian Core, things were different. There were no buzzwords in leadership meetings, no glossy presentations trying to impress a boardroom full of people who didn't know the difference between a data lake and a black hole. Adrienne handed me the keys, figuratively and literally. You decide the architecture, the protocols, the pace. We'll follow your lead. So I started building. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. We didn't rush. We didn't cut corners. Every system had audit trails embedded at the root. Every API had fallback logic designed not just for scale, but for resilience. I wrote the core data compliance layer myself, not because I had to, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to build something clean. The team? Young, yes, but hungry in the right way. Not chasing titles, but understanding the weight of real-world systems. I mentored without ego. I listened more, delegated smarter, and slowly a culture took shape. One built on respect, not just for titles or tenure, but for truth. We launched the new system under a name they chose, Sentinel. It wasn't flashy, but it did what no competitor product could: real-time anomaly detection with human context. Alignment. First client, a former Helix Core account. Second client, a former Helix Core investor. They'd seen the cracks forming long before the headlines. They just needed someone with integrity and a working product. The industry took notice. Wired called it the comeback of the year. A Forbes editor called me the last craftsman in a world of code churners. I laughed at that one. But I got the point. I didn't just regain respect. I rewrote what it meant to earn it in the first place, and in doing so, I built something Helix Core never could. A team that knew why the system mattered. A product that carried principles, not just promises, and a future that didn't depend on silencing the past. It was Adrienne who told me first. Helix Core wants to talk. I blinked. About what? They're looking to partner, merge, maybe. Their investors are pushing them to salvage what's left. At first, I laughed. Then I paused. It wasn't a joke. A few days later, I got the official request. We believe a strategic integration between our platforms could benefit both entities, the email read. I recognized the sender, Helix Core's new interim CTO. Lucas? Nowhere to be found. I didn't respond immediately. I took a walk around the Radian Core lab. Watched our engineers solving problems I used to fight alone. Saw Megan, now working for us, leading a sprint review with clarity and confidence. Saw interns shadowing seniors not with fear, but curiosity. We had already won, not in numbers, in roots. Still I agreed to the meeting, not out of revenge, out of responsibility. We met in a neutral office space, glass walls, polished tables, the kind of room where empires are negotiated or quietly dismantled. The Helix Core team laid it all out. Failing infrastructure, abandoned clients, a damaged brand. They needed a lifeline, and they knew Sentinel was it. They wanted me to lead the integration, to come back as the face of the new alliance. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice. I just laid out terms, full autonomy for Sentinel, non-negotiable ethical compliance protocols, and complete transparency on the origin and authorship of every module we merged, with my name and my team's name exactly where they belonged. Executive asked, "Would you consider returning to Helix Core full-time?" I shook my head. "No, but you can meet us at our level if you're willing to build the right way." Because I wasn't chasing revenge, I was enforcing standards. And for the first time in a long time, the room fell respectfully and completely silent. 3 months later, I walked through the doors of the Helix Core building. Same glass lobby. Same echo in the atrium. Same receptionist who didn't quite know whether to smile or look away, but I wasn't there as an employee. I was there as a partner. Sentinel integration had begun, and part of the agreement was a transition audit, conducted by us on their turf. I didn't bring a team, I didn't need to, just my tablet, a notepad, and a name badge that said Radian Core Systems Executive Lead. Lucas's office was empty, a different name on the door. A junior analyst passed by, stopped, did a double take. "Wait, Thomas?" I smiled politely. "Just here for system review." People stared. Whispers trailed behind me, but no one said a word. I walked the same halls where I'd once been dismissed as legacy, now asked to document the recovery of the very system I was removed from. No anger, no speeches, just execution. At the end of the day, I sat in the break room, sipping their watered-down coffee, watching a familiar maintenance crew replace one of the old server panels I'd designed years ago. The irony, that model had outlasted the leadership that tried to replace it. As I left the building, Megan caught up to me. "Felt weird, didn't it?" she asked. "No," I said. "Felt accurate, because true vindication doesn't scream. It signs off quietly, with a signature at the bottom of the new standard." I turned down the corner office at Radian Core, not because I didn't appreciate the offer, I did. But that was never the mission. Instead, I set up a small mentorship lab in the old server room. No glass walls, no slide decks. Just a circle of desks, a whiteboard, and young engineers learning how to build things that last. I handpicked the mentees, not based on resumes, but on questions, curiosity, integrity, hunger. Not for titles, but for truth. I taught them what no bootcamp or AI model could ever replicate. How to read a system's pulse, not just its metrics. How to design for the day something breaks, because it always does. And how to walk away from a project knowing it will stand even without your name attached. Some called it legacy. I called it insurance. Against the noise, the shortcuts, the cycles of forgetting. Because in the end, code fades, contracts expire. But what you teach someone about doing things the right way, that sticks. I never raised my voice. Never wrote a tell-all. Never fought dirty. I just stayed ready. Because real value doesn't need to shout. It just outlasts everything that doesn't.